Hey, Karen,
Yes.
did you know that there are four spiritual archetypes?
No,
You didn't know that.
I did not know
I
that.
didn't either. They are based on the medicine wheel. So there's one for each quadrant, like north, east, south, west. So do I seem like a guardian to you?
Like a guardian of the
A
galaxy?
guardian of the north, to be quite exact.
Like Groot?
I am not Groot. Well, apparently that's what I am. I'm a guardian. Joining us today is a master of sacred medicine and shamanic practices. She'll be sharing her extraordinary journey and will dive into the world of shamanic practices, uncover the mysteries of spiritual archetypes, and find out how these concepts are linked to personal healing and spiritual growth. We'll even get the scoop on her highly intriguing archetype assessment tool, which can help you identify your own unique spiritual archetype, Karen.
Ooh, very cool.
Do you have any idea what you might?
No idea.
That's excellent.
So I didn't know they existed. So I'd be very impressed if I had an idea.
Me too. But you are impressive. So, well, if you're ready to integrate a little magic into your everyday life and achieve some much needed balance and fulfillment, then stick around, because trust me, you won't want to miss what she's got to share today. Stay tuned, Metaphysicians. This episode is going to be one wild spiritual ride. My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
So we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something.
Anything.
That will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Today, we've got a radiant soul joining us who's deeply passionate about guiding individuals to connect with the spirit world and embrace the essence of life. Now, she's a beacon of light in the world of sacred medicine and mystical practices for ecstatic living. With a heart dedicated to service and prosperity, our guest brings ancient wisdom and modern rituals together seamlessly. I am so excited to welcome to the show. We've never had a spirit bird on the show before.
No.
We do today. Spirit bird, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here with you both.
Well, we're thrilled to have you.
We are. Obviously, the very first question, spirit bird?
Sure. You want to hear the story?
We do.
Yes.
I'm so curious, spirit bird.
So my story with my name really starts out with, you know the phrase, if you carry a snake like that long enough, it'll bite you?
No, because I will never carry a snake long enough. I will never carry a snake, period. So,
well, the snake I was carrying around is called, I would never give myself one of those stupid spirit names. I would never be like one of those people. I would never, ever do that.
Well, surprise. So
yes. Incidentally, so I was doing some training, and this is when it all came in, and part of the practice and kind of this work in general, but specifically with this training is you would always begin stating your name when you were sharing something, and also the practice is to share what is most present for you in your awareness whenever you're speaking. And so
before we go any further, let's just, what you mentioned this practice, what practice are we talking about here?
In medicine work and shamanic work in general.
Got it. Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So this is where a lot of my training has been for most of my life. And yeah, again, I never really thought I would take a different name. I certainly didn't want to. It was definitely part of my journey. And here I was about to share something, and I kind of felt this tap on my shoulder, and spirit said, say spirit bird, introduce yourself that way, say spirit bird. And so I thought it for a second, but I went ahead and moved forward with it because this is part of the practice. And I noticed when I said I'm spirit bird, I felt this big sense of home. And I also noticed my colleagues seemed to kind of look at me like, whoa, that's true. And then I spent about 1.5 years basically wrestling with it, fighting it.
What you did afterwards, that wrestling with it, I would have done that the whole time. I would have been.
Well, it took a long time for me to really settle into it. And when I did finally, I knew when I realized I was going to take the name, the big holdup for me was I really didn't want to look like I was trying to get attention. that was just a snapshot into my inner dilemmas.
Sure.
Um, and, when I finally did take the name, I was clear for myself. If I'm doing it, I'm doing it. I don't want to do a thing where some people know me one way and other people know me another way, or only in certain places do I use the name Spirit Bird. And then when I was finally into using it, a couple months into it, I mean, when I order at Starbucks, when my name on Facebook has changed, I was at this workshop and introducing myself this way. And a woman came up to me and she said, I really need to talk to you, but not right now because I'm going to cry. So I said, okay, sure. Well, whenever you're ready, we can talk. And later that day, she shared with me that she had lost a child years ago, a daughter, and she was doing a meditation a few years prior to our meeting. And in the meditation, she got a message that said, one day your daughter will return. And like a spirit bird, you'll know your daughter is okay.
Oh, no, she
Wow.
didn't. Age kind of correlates?
So it's close. It's not exact. I don't actually think that I'm her daughter. To me, I really took it as it was enough to be sweet. To me, I took it as, for me, it was like, this whole thing is not about you at all. The teaching was about just following spirit and, and my delight and letting it happen. And I think for her, it was a confirmation for her intuition as well, because she had gotten this message. It was really clear, but she's like, what the heck does that mean? What is a spirit bird?
Kind of what we're all asking.
Stuck with her. That message stuck with her. So then when we met, it was just that quick little moment of like, that whole time we were second guessing ourselves was completely unnecessary.
So I got to ask the question, have you worked with her since? Like, was there a karmic connection made?
That's a good question. That tends to be the case where I go. I tend to sort of like kind of link in with people unintentionally, usually just by being myself. With this person in particular, we didn't really do a professional relationship, but we have kept up.
All right. So do you consider yourself a shaman?
I do.
So how did you find your way to becoming a shaman?
Yeah. So shaman isn't specifically Native American. So this is a place where there's a lot of certainly controversial, and I think it's important to walk with respect here. But essentially, shamanic practices are earth-based practices that are pretty much common or pretty much true across all cultures. So some of the earliest peoples, the way that they interacted with life and with the unseen world and with each other would be considered shamanic. The word itself is actually Siberian, so that's not actually Native American.
Now, wow.
Of course, within Native American traditions, most of them are shamanic.
And I guess cross-culturally, everybody has their word for a practitioner at that level, like a priestess or, I don't know, something, a shaman.
Yep.
Now, but so it could just, be the same thing, just different verbiage.
Right. So is it, you are very well trained in this type of thing. And when I was younger, I was called to Native American practices and things like that. That's where the word stuck with me.
Yeah.
But you're right. It encompasses a whole much broader spectrum than just Native American practices. It's a way of, I would almost say it's almost a way of being, right? Where it's even more than a priesthood, for lack of a better word. It's you walk the shamanic path when you're following this path. So what drew you to this path then?
Well, when I was younger, a lot of people that are kind of sensitive or like young kids these days, when we're younger, the veil between worlds is pretty thin. It's pretty common. You have wilder imaginations. You're a little bit more connected to the magic. And so that was true for me. And with most kids, you sort of, as you get older, you get a little bit more disconnected from that.
For sure.
And I actually had the opposite happen. So as I got older, the things from the invisible realm were showing up in the 3D. So I was having I was physically seeing spirits. I was hearing things strong enough that I would look around to see if there was someone in the room with me, which was really disorienting and confusing. And at the time, there really wasn't any. I grew up in a conservative community. So there really wasn't any context for what was going on. I didn't know what was going on, certainly. Other than mental health was kind of like the place to put me. And actually I got pretty lucky with a therapist when I was a teenager that helped me understand a little bit about taking, empathy and feeling things that are outside of ourselves, and kind of planted the seed of the idea of ritual or ceremony. So that's really where it started for me. And where I got into shamanism specifically is when I was a teenager. I was really into Eastern philosophy and meditation and that kind of thing. And I loved it. But I also felt like there was just like a little something that was missing for me. And then I was doing some studies in my undergrad and came across one of the books that I was reading on the science of sleep and dreams, referenced a shaman from the University of Arizona. And this was early 2000s. So I was like, what is that? And happened to find a workshop not too far away, a couple of weeks away. And I just jumped in. I really liked exploring consciousness and learning different things. And pretty much within the first couple of hours of being there, I suddenly realized a lot of the things that I had kind of done naturally fell into that kind of work. I suddenly had context. I had language for what was happening. So that was really my entry point.
Right.
So then how do you continue training? Like, where it's not like you can just look it up in a college, roster, shaman 101. Like, how do you find that training, and what's the training like?
So it can vary so much that I think that's something important to emphasize. I think a lot of us get this idea that it's supposed to be a certain way. And so I'll just preface with that, where there's a lot of different types of training you can do. And so you have like lineages. So this might be like within a specific Native American tribe, for example, where there would be a specific way or a specific route where only certain people would train. And then you have kind of more Gnostic routes that are based on people's direct experience. And you can have, specialties in different areas. For me, I worked with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies initially. At the time, that was the one thing that you could find. And then I studied, kind of like mentored with a woman who happened to be a Norse shaman. She didn't teach me in Norse shamanism, but she happened to be one. And I worked with a Gnostic teacher for years after that. I started seeing clients in between, and then I trained within a lineage for a little while as well. So it's kind of been a little bit of really traditional work and a little bit of more kind of newer approaches or out of the box approaches.
Okay.
Cool. Very
and
cool.
For me, to answer your question earlier, for me, where I've really settled is most of the work that I do and that I teach is based on, my own personal relationship with the spirits and my own experience working with clients, versus learning somebody else's tradition and then teaching a tradition.
Got it. So would you consider the term shaman more of a teacher, a healer? What would you consider that to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So frustrating as a practitioner because it's so hard to explain. But a little bit of both. What I've kind of settled on is I find that for sure shamans are healers, for sure they're guides. They tend to work both on healing and manifesting. I think that's an easier way to understand it. So we're working both with how we want the world to be different or our lives to be different, and what needs to heal within ourselves as an individual or within our community in order to achieve that.
So when someone comes to you and they need some help, what does that look like? Do you meet with them virtually? Like how does that work?
Personally, I meet most of folks virtually. But again, this can really vary. There's a lot of room for people to bring in their unique gifts. That's kind of that's what I like to help people with, is really understand the uniqueness that they have and what they've been designed to do, and then bring that into their work. So I happen to work virtually. And the way I teach this, is focused on really empowering the people I'm with and really showing them how to do their own healing work, right? As opposed to me kind of doing something for them. So for that, I don't actually need to be in person. And a lot of times, I know this is not what most people would expect, but a lot of times I find that when we're on Zoom or on a phone call, it's actually easier for people to drop in and connect with the energy. because they're somewhere that's comfortable. They're not worried about what I'm doing. They're not worried about what they look like. It's kind of like, this is probably a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like if you were having sex, you wouldn't want the door open if you have a roommate in the other room, right?
Well, some people, I mean, I'm just saying.
So,
No judgment.
yeah. So in a way, there's like, it's just so much easier for people to really just drop in and be with the energy itself instead of trying to read what's happening around the energy.
Right. I gotta be like reverse will or something, because I heard that all the time. That's so much easier to drop in when you're like on the Zoom and a virtual call. I have such a hard time. I'm so much better in person. Like when we went to Kathy to get hypnotized in person, I dropped in immediately. Whereas I did a past life regression through Zoom, and it was just, I don't know that I actually went. I don't know if I'm feeling self-conscious because I'm on a camera, and I don't know. It's just I'm definitely like backwards will or something.
So Lou.
It took me a minute. I got it.
So, when you think of shaman, you think of, me anyways, I don't know about everybody else, but I think of rituals and plant medicine. And so half of my family is from South America. And so seeing and learning a little bit about the shamans there's like all kinds of animals involved and like a lot of stuff like that. So that's the only little bit of knowledge that I have about shamanism. I would imagine it's very different when you're working with someone. I don't think there's a guinea pig or anything like that involved. And it's like a thing in Ecuador. But anyways.
Well, Ecuador is a lot of things with guinea pigs.
There's a lot of, well, that's true too. But do you do any sort of rituals, or is it mostly just reading energy? What does that look like?
Yeah, again, I do actually do some in-person work too, and do ceremonial work with plant medicine or without. So I do a little bit of both. Generally, most of my practice happens to be virtually, but it just kind of depends on what is being called for. And certainly ritual, or I would say ceremony, is a large part of the work. It's like the undercurrent of everything, of like there's a beginning point and an end point in the work we're doing and how we're showing it in the world, and in tools we might use. And it's a great way to bring that invisible realm into the 3D, right? With the ceremony and ritual.
We know with quantum physics has shown that you do not need to be in the same room. Energy is energy, and it's affected instantaneously. So lots and lots of people have wonderful experiences with Zoom, and we have had like breath work stuff that we did.
Ooh, yeah.
So, but I'm curious, do you do any kind of rituals yourself before you get on the call with them, or is it usually mostly rituals together on Zoom, or how does that work?
That's actually kind of hard for me to answer, because I feel like at this point, this is so immersed in my life that it's kind of just part of my daily life and daily practice anyway. In the same way that if you meditate regularly, it tends to get quicker for you to drop in. So for me, that's kind of part of the process and just what life is like all the time.
Sure. No, makes perfect sense.
And then do you have to kind of cleanse your energetic system when you're done?
Yeah, I guess maybe around the question of rituals, I think it's important for sure, whether you're a shaman or not, just as a person, to have, an intention before you go in to do work or connect with people, and then to just double check that you've disentangled any energy when you've completed. And we all do that all the time, right? When we hang out with somebody or when we're thinking of somebody. So it's not like you're never supposed to have anybody's energy in you or you in the other. It's just more about awareness and keeping it kind of tidy. It's like hygiene.
So for our audience that are listening, and they might not necessarily know what kind of issues they could reach out to you for, can you give us some examples of maybe some of the ways you've helped people?
Oh, sure. Well, generally in my work, I train a lot of spiritual healers and help them with their unique medicine. I think my specialty is really spiritual gifts. So if you're noticing that you're starting to have really interesting synchronicities, or you can just tell something's wanting to come through you, or you happen to like have some psychic or telepathic senses awakened and you don't really know what to do with them, that's often where I'll come in and help folks.
Nice.
How about those that want gifts, but they're not feeling anything? They just want them.
Yeah, we can do that too. And actually, that's yes, you got it. I mean, I think to go back to your earlier question, I'm careful here because I want to be certainly respectful, but at the same time, I think that there's been so much misinformation about the shamanic work that just to be blunt, white people feel like they're not allowed to, or they can't, or it's not part of being human. And so for me, I find that shamanic work and spiritual gifts in particular, they're just part of being human like any other sense. And like anything else, when we're born, some of us are born, more in tune with that part of us and others are not. Like I am not a natural car mechanic at all.
Me either.
I could learn if I really wanted to.
Right. I'm not a car mechanic. I'm not a plumber. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not a handyman. I'm not a.
I knew none of this before I signed up. No, I'm kidding.
Well, let me ask you, I'm curious, what do you feel like, is there something that you feel like people naturally gain as a result of being in your presence? Has that ever been reflected to you?
That's a.
I don't know. I mean,
that's
I
a
think
very telling silence.
this is good. I know, really, nothing. They walk away very sad. No, I think people get happy around us.
Yes, we have been told that we are fun to be around, and we seem to kind of be like we liven up the room when we walk in. But that's
just
that's about
that's
it.
not special,
Right?
That's just good jokes,
or not,
or not. Or
they
bad
feel
jokes.
better because we tell
Maybe
such
they feel
bad
better because we
jokes.
leave.
Right?
Feels so good when they leave every
Right.
time.
Right. We make them feel really good. Yeah.
Well, just as a quick reflection, I mean, that is part of, now I realize you're working as a team here, but that is part of your gift, at least as a team, is, not only are you bringing energy to a situation and lightening the mood, but I think you naturally put people at ease. I know I experienced that when I came on. I was like, oh,
Did you?
this is what we're doing. Great.
And then I promptly threw you under the bus with that appropriation question.
I know, right?
Nice, Will. Way to
I was
go.
just like,
I'm sorry. I honestly did not mean anything by it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, I'm not offended at all. It's something
Okay,
I
good.
talk about a lot.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Do you help people get started or get that momentum to really dive into these little inklings that they're getting?
How do people jumpstart?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, I think there's two main paths that most people experience. One, or I guess three, because there's probably a combination of the two, but one, you either have this like slow nudge throughout a lot of your life, like maybe a few things happen at certain points that kind of make you think, oh, I kind of want to explore other worlds, or I want to explore, I know there's more to life, right? Than and so it's kind of like this little nudge that grows and grows over time. Or you get an initiation. So life throws something at you, which might be losing your job, which might be losing a loved one. It might be a spontaneous awakening where you're just eating dinner one day and then suddenly you awaken and you're like, whoa, where am I? What's going on here? And so I think it's important to just know that those are often entry points. And that little nudge is, in fact, an entry point, and it tends to grow stronger over time. I guess that's where the mix, where it becomes both, is if you keep ignoring the nudge for long enough. Often life will be like, you need, here's a bigger sign.
Yeah, it becomes a 2x4 to the head. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's something in there. There's something in there for you that life wants to invite you into, that wants to show you. And it might be something, it might be information, or it begins this journey of some kind of like inner healing so that you can experience what you truly want in life.
How do you anchor yourself in that? Someone like I was interested in this stuff from a very young age. Life got in the way, forgot about it. Then later on in life, a crisis happened, and I was forced to face myself and look into this direction again, and life got in the way again. So I'm here. I hear you, universe. I hear you. Don't hit me over the head anymore. But it's difficult to keep yourself grounded in this three-dimensional world we're living in, while at the same time following a spiritual path. So what kind of guidance can you give someone who wants to be there, but it's keeps getting thrown under the bus by reality?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a center point between the two that's really important. And that's that's usually around your individual healing path. So we all have kind of somewhat of a blueprint, and there's lots of different, I guess, modalities or approaches to this. You see this in astrology and numerology. I work with archetypes within my work, human design, all of this stuff, right? There are different approaches to understand your context. And typically underneath them, there's that core piece of healing that is a theme throughout your life. And that piece is both the launching point into the depths of the spiritual journey that you might be interested in, but it's also the launching point into sort of balance in your life and correcting or adjusting the day-to-day things. And I think that's what gets missed a lot, actually. It's something that I get kind of frustrated with in this work because I love all the woo stuff. I'm super woo. I love all the multidimensional things. I love all of the spiritual gift stuff. I totally nerd out on it. There's like a whole part of my consciousness that gets fed that way, that doesn't get fed any other way. The intellect can only do so much, right? So I love that, but also there's no point if we're not doing something with it in our day-to-day lives. And so sometimes that just means having better relationships with your family. Sometimes that means starting a spiritual business. And again, I think that center point is really the piece. And so life can get in the way. I think it's really more about, I guess, making the decision that you want that, and understanding that the thing that's calling you to the spiritual work is also the thing that helps you with your everyday life.
So you mentioned the archetypes, and I did a deep dive in your website, like I mentioned, and apparently I'm a guardian north quadrant, whatever that means.
Yes,
so
you are.
we're going to talk about that in a second. We got to take a quick break, but we're going to dive into those archetypes because I found them fascinating, and I'm curious to hear what the guardian north quadrant actually is. So stay with us. We'll be right back right after these messages. Welcome back to Skeptic Metaphysicians. We're talking to Spirit Bird, and she's giving us a deep dive not only into shamanism, but also into how to anchor ourselves in spirituality. And right before the break, we were talking about these spiritual archetypes that she works with. And there's a test that you have that we're going to link in our show notes so that you can take it yourself if you like, to find out what your archetype is as well.
You took a test?
I took a
I
test.
didn't tell you about this test.
I didn't.
I want to take the test.
Well, I'll give you.
Is it long? Is it long?
No,
You have to study.
It's actually not so bad, but you can check it out in our show notes.
Okay.
And find out
Yeah,
your own
I wanna
archetypes.
find out what I am.
Right.
I want to be something.
Well, you are something. You are. So it turns out I'm a guardian north quadrant. And when I mentioned that to you, you immediately said, yes, you are. So obviously I'm showing you some
Guardian North Quadrant traits.
some north quadrant traits. So I'm super curious not only about what the guardian north quadrant means, but also what are these archetypes that people can be?
Yeah. So this is kind of my proprietary work, and I work with it. I kind of link them to the directions. So if you have done some shamanic work or medicine wheel work, there's some correlation there. And also with just the process of transformation in general. So each archetype also tends to hang out in a part of, a human life. So I guess I'll go around let me start with you, I guess. So
Okay.
the guardian tends to be very much a leader. They represent sort of the, as a collective, they represent sort of the mature adult, the leader of something, the developed wisdom. And they also tend to be, I call them the guardians because oftentimes they're not protective necessarily, but they truly, on some level, see what's sacred and keep it sacred in some way. Usually it's very different from person to person what that looks like. In your life, and this is that grounding point. Typically, we have a core teaching that we're learning throughout our lifetime. And so I think this is where people get frustrated or on their journey is you might work on something for a while and then it comes back around later. And it feels like, oh, like this again. Oh my God, I can't believe this is here again.
Yes.
And there's a lot of talk in spiritual work around like, firmly and finally moving through it, like healing that thing once and for all. And I don't think that's the way it works at all. So the point isn't necessarily to get rid of this thing. The point is to understand it and incorporate it. And it's that center point also that helps us move as we work on that. We move from the wounded version of that into the gifts of that same thing. That's why we don't want to get rid of it.
Okay.
And so with the North, this might actually kind of relate to your question, Will, around, there always seems to be something that gets in the way. So the North, where they tend to struggle is putting other people first, putting other things in their life first, just having like prioritizing themselves is a challenge. And so I'll give like the extreme example. So like at the least evolved, the least conscious version, which of course there's no hierarchy here. It's not like there's one that's better than the other, but just the exaggerated version is like, you're always doing for other people. You're always like, anytime you get a break, then somebody's like sick and needs them to take care of you, or, somebody drops the ball and now you have to go into work and it was your day off. Like that kind of thing is like the way it looks in the 3D.
You're totally a guardian, Karen. That is totally her. I have never been called mature before, but she has. The leader part, all that kind of stuff, it makes great sense. Yeah. It's interesting because we talked about the crisis I had a while ago, 3 years ago. I would have said, no way, that's not me at all. But I've learned that who I was not really who I am. And so I discovered that I was a different person, and it's more aligned with what you're talking about. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So then what are the other?
Yeah. So, so the other, I'll start with the wheel. So the East, I call the change maker. So, and also the sun's setting on my video right now. So I'm just going to name it. So if you're watching this on video, that's what's happening.
She is not spontaneously combusting. It's just
like right here.
Could be her glowing personality.
That's true. She's speaking truth. Look how bright it is coming out.
The light. Yes.
Yes. So let me, as I'm talking about the East, this is perfect actually. Well, the East tends to be, it's like the beginning of life stage. So the East is like, if you experience the East, if that's your archetype, a lot of times you tend to be kind of naturally magical. You tend to be naturally like in tune. Non-dual concepts like make sense to you. That's not challenging. You just get that.
Oh, that's totally you, Karen.
And but also what people that are the East struggle with a lot of times in life is kind of being part of the system. So conventions are challenging. Maybe holding down a regular job can be challenging. Just like some of those like very 3D things can be very overwhelming. And so this is part of their healing path, right? Is to learn how to find that center point so that they can bring their gifts of their connection to the unseen world into the 3D world. And that's what makes them change makers.
Right. Kind of sounds like me, actually.
Kind of does.
Well, so we all have all four of these.
Oh, okay.
And
that was going to be my next question.
Have them in a certain order.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And there's going to be certain parts of your life where you are going to learn more about, like you might be the North, but you might be in an East curriculum at a certain period in time. Because again, this is like, the idea is this is the balanced human. This is the energetic blueprint of wholeness, right?
So do we want to be part of all of them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. I got it right.
Yeah. So again, the East, like in order for them to be the way that looks in their life is they often we resist the thing that is what we're meant to do and what would help us the most. I don't know who set it up that way or why it's like that, but that seems to be the way that it works. And so oftentimes they really they resist things like structure, like money, like politics, when actually they're the ones that are supposed to change it, help make it better, help make it the thing that they know it can be.
Gotcha.
So I'll move around to the South. So the South I call the path maker. The South tends to be, they often kind of get mislabeled as antagonists. Well, sometimes they're not mislabeled. Sometimes they're actually bullies. But oftentimes they aren't being one, but they get perceived that way. So maybe they're speaking truth and there's a bunch of people around that are a bit sensitive or get triggered. And so they'll be mad at that person and be like, you're a jerk, you're a bully. And so the South tends to go through life having to navigate this place of speaking truth, but also being aware that there are other people and other people have feelings.
Well, now that sounds like me too.
I don't know.
More like the bully part of it,
Yeah,
but
not the bully part.
no, but you say I love to antagonize.
Oh my God, you do. You do. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
So there's a good chance that that's like a secondary part of your path and your curriculum. But obviously, well, at least for you, is the little bit that I know you will, obviously you've worked on part of this too, because you have such a open heart,
Well,
you know, and that's
thank
part
you.
of the healing path is like, oh, once they kind of work that heart piece and are not afraid to be vulnerable around people, that's where the magic happens. But it's that same energy, that antagonistic energy, that is what makes them the path maker, because they don't have as much fear, or they're willing to go in despite the fear. So I find that those people tend to be like trailblazers. They go into the unknown, they go alone, they see something that people haven't seen before, and they go there.
Got it.
And that allows other people to follow them. So then the West, I wonder if that might be a little bit of you, Karen. The West tends to be, it's not that they're empaths. Anybody can be empathic, right? But they tend to carry a lot of the traits that you might see in an empath. So they tend to be naturally aware of the collective. Nobody taught them that. They just came into this world being aware of other people and other feelings and wanting to make other people feel good.
Oh, yeah. Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, that's so funny what I said today. There's my day to make people feel good.
Yeah,
That was my job today.
It was her full disclosure, that's her job every day. So yeah, no, that sounds right up Karen's alley.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some of the things that people in the West, and I call the West actualizers, are really gifted at is like structure and taking things and bringing it into the 3D. So they're really good at supporting. Like if you have an idea, they tend to be really good at figuring out like how to make it work, how to set it up, what the organization looks like. They're good supporters in that they're naturally cheerleaders, right? Same kind of thing.
That is smack dab. Like if I had any doubt whatsoever, this is 100% you, Karen.
I gotta take the test.
No, you don't have to. I'm telling you, you are the West.
Does it resonate with you, Karen?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Good.
Like,
yeah. So, and then part of the journey for that particular archetype is, I think, really around staying in themselves. So part of the journey, part of your awareness of other people has, again, this is like an extreme example, but it can be sometimes it's hard to actually tell what you're thinking, what your own feelings are. It might be hard to like even say what you want because you want to check in on what everybody else wants first, right? So the healing path is usually just like actually staying in your center and then bringing that outwards and sharing that with others.
hello, extreme case. Sorry.
That was a little south of you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What's happening here?
Hey, Spirit Bird, you gave me the excuse. Now I am all about you.
He's gonna live up to that now.
It's just how I am, baby. Sorry.
How I am. Great.
Oh.
So I love this work. I love these. They're so simple and they're so powerful, but they can go deep as you want to go, and they'll be with you your whole life. So you can make friends with them. And again, this is that center point. This is where the way your spiritual gifts work, the way you open them up is through healing. And so when you go to do some inner journey or uncover something or go to a place in you or in your emotions that you've been scared to go and you finally go there, it's also where the new stage of gifts open up for you. So they work together in that way. And that's where the 3D stuff, where it's like, okay, being able to like maybe make a decision quickly without having to worry about everybody else is really helpful for the actualizer in their life, because they get to be more in charge. They get to actually get their desires met. They usually have really gorgeous hearts naturally. So it's really great when we get to actually know what they want and consider that in the decision-making process for a group. So there's like a lot of practical things in the 3D that help keep you grounded. and allow you to see like, oh, okay, there's a place where maybe I need to come back to this again.
Yeah.
But then you get to play in the spiritual gift side, because as you work on that, it'll open up things, on the woo side, on the multidimensional realm that you didn't have access to before. And so I find in this way you get to be in both, which
It's a
for me
win-win.
is really important.
Yeah. Now, and I will say you must have been working on it, because though you have that big heart, you do speak your mind. You do say what you want to do. So that's never really been in question, that part of it. So there's obviously work there. And to Spirit Bird's point, you have encountered the woo in a pretty robust way. So congratulations, you're doing a good job.
Well, thank you.
That's a long way of me to say that. But
No, but I think that when you are tapping in, whether you're just starting to learn it or you're really full on in, there's just something about it that makes life so much more beautiful and so much more fun and exciting and deeper and more fulfilling than just like this, little scientific creature that's muddling its way through its, time on the earth.
yeah. So when you work with someone in this space, I assume the first thing you do is figure out what their archetype is and then find what they need and move them forward.
Generally speaking, yeah. Again, at this point, I can usually tell what somebody is pretty much right away. And that's what I teach in my shaman school program. I teach people how to work with these archetypes in their life or business or profession.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so what I love about them, why I think they're powerful, is that they do give context. That's where the meaning comes from and the beauty comes from, right? Because it takes these interactions that just seem ordinary, and suddenly you see these deep layers of meaning buried within them. That's where you get more connection. So when I work with somebody, I'm usually watching that. You can come in with any question you have, or you can come in working with any issue you have. For me, knowing your archetype and probably the first, the order of your archetypes tells me right away what path you're on, what you're going to be working on in general, and probably where you are on that path. So I get to, for me as a practitioner, I get information really quickly about your context and what's going to serve you the most, because I wouldn't give somebody that's a path maker the same advice necessarily as I would somebody who's a change maker, because they're different people and they're at different points in their journey.
So how do you find the order of archetypes?
We're playing around with actually introducing that to the assessment at some point. But I also feel like it kind of overly complicates it.
It might muddy everything up.
If you're new, if you want to do the deep dive, then that's another thing, and we can work on that. But you could, I do have a course that covers all of them, so you can just learn about the archetypes in general. And so if you took that, or, you took the quiz and found out what each of them were, I think you could probably get a sense of where they were stacked. Most people kind of know that intuitively. Generally, the first one, your primary one, is going to be pretty obvious. Generally, your secondary one might seem like a primary one. It tends to be more of your shadow. So it might be the thing that is more of a shadow thing that you've been working on throughout your life. And of course, from there.
I'm just watching. I feel like we should end the interview because the light's going to be blinding her in like 2 minutes. Like it's getting higher and higher.
Don't see these light.
We can wait if you want to put some shades on or something. But honestly, this has been really unbelievably informative. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, either to work with you or to, obviously they can take the test to find out what their archetype is through our in our show notes. We'll have a link there directly laid in for them. But if they wanted to dive deeper into that, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
Well, you can find me, most of my socials and my website, all that stuff is Holton Healing Arts. That's the name of my company. So you can find my website and reach out to me there or on any social media channel. I do think that the archetype assessment is a great way to start. But I work with people in a few different capacities. So start there and you can check out the website and see what else I have going on.
Yeah, because you do have a lot going on. We didn't talk about your podcast that you have. We didn't talk about a lot of the stuff. So I urge you, you know what? We're also going to add a link to her website on our show notes. So all you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to her episode page, and you will find that link directly there. Do hit it and go to her site, because there's so many other dimensions to spirit bird than we had a chance to discuss that we're definitely going to be in touch afterwards.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for coming on the show.
It was a pleasure.
And a huge thank you to you. If you like the show and the guests that we bring on, then you're definitely want to be a part of our inner circle. See, the inner circle is absolutely free to join, and it gives you an opportunity to not only interact with Karen and I, but you'll also be able to engage with fellow listeners like yourself. You'll also find tons of discounts for services from some of our past guests, so that you can check them out for yourself to see which path makes the most sense for you. We're also going to be doing a lot of great giveaways, like free sessions from some of our guests. You can gain access to behind the scenes videos, even get the chance to be on the show with us. All the while, you'll be helping the show grow by letting people know about us. Did we mention it's 100% free? Check out our show notes for the link to our inner circle and join today, and then drop in and say hello and tell us what episode you heard this on. We might just give you a shout out on the show. Well, that's all for now, but we'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysician. Until then, take care.